G'day. Today's big question, we'll be looking at some issues around domestic family violence. And if those things are a trigger for you or an issue of concern that you'd prefer not to watch today's big question, feel free to turn off now. At the end of it, if you are someone that it raises some questions, please feel free to give us a call and talk to us or ring 1-800-RESPECT.
G'day everyone, we're continuing on with our big questions, and today I have the minister from Willoughby Uniting Church, Ingrid, with us. It's fabulous to have you, Ingrid.
Thank you.
Now, I've got Ingrid to chat with me about this question. I'm going to read it out in its entirety and then we'll sort of play with it from there. How do we as Christians separate ourselves from close members of our families who hurt us physically and or mentally? I'm glad it's not me that has to answer this, Ingrid. I'm very pleased to go to someone else. But
right.
It's a tricky question, isn't it? Like that sort of, how do we deal with the Christian values that we hold, but sometimes it's very difficult and challenging to live those out.
Yep. And I am, as everyone, particularly unqualified to answer this question, but I will do my best.
Because almost every question is actually about every situation is individual and different, isn't it? You can't sort of have a blank rule.
Kind of. I guess the first question I ask is the person in immediate danger? Because if they're trying to separate themselves from families who physically or mentally hurt them, is this actually an issue of domestic violence? Are they in immediate danger? And if they are, do they have access to a GP? If they don't have access to a trusted GP, can they ring 1-800-RESPECT and talk through with the volunteers who are trained in this area and who are gentle and who offer complete anonymity? Or is there a trusted friend who can help them access help? Because the first priority is to ensure your own safety and the safety of the kids if they're also victims.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter Christian or not, the first thing is to ensure your own safety and the safety of your family.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, Jesus cared for the individual with a passion and yes, as an individual.
And violence affects so much of life. It's not just, it doesn't just affect us mentally, it affects us physically and spiritually and psychologically, and there are unconscious effects as well. We often see violence, like a violent cycle in families.
Yeah.
And it's not a conscious thing, it's an unconscious effect of violent experience when someone was younger. When Jesus talks about coming to bring life in abundance, he wasn't talking about this. He's talking about a rich and satisfying life. And I think if there's immediate danger, the most important thing is to find safety in whatever way you can.
Yes, 100% agree with you. It's interesting, but how do we take it into the next thing of how do we accommodate that into a faith that calls us to love and have compassion?
There's an old phrase, I don't know where it comes from. Sometimes loving is letting someone go.
Yeah.
Sometimes loving is finding the help that a loved one needs. Sometimes loving means getting an intervention so that your partner or your family member can seek the help that they obviously so desperately needs. Like, we're not necessarily the best ones to help a violent or abusive loved one get better. And maybe the loving thing is to refer them for professional help.
Yeah, look, I hadn't actually thought about like sometimes loving the perpetrator actually means cutting away from them so that they can realise.
Yeah. Like, if my kid breaks his arm, I'm not going to try and fix it myself because I don't have those skills. I will seek medical help. And God's gifted each of us, Christian or not, with gifts and talents and passions and wisdom. And we can actually help a loved one by referring them on to someone who has the talent to help them, who has the skills to help them, who can actually help them heal.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in a sense, there is a place for a Christian to protect themselves and remove themselves from difficult situations.
Yeah. I think of the Matthew 23 passage where what is the greatest commandment? Well, you'll love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, but you'll also love your neighbour as yourself. Well, part of that is actually loving yourself.
Yeah.
Part of that is respecting your own self, respecting your right to live without violence, your right to live actually a whole and abundant life.
Yes. Yeah. So there is actually that, yes, the equation of loving others and loving yourself. Sometimes we just forget the self part, don't we? We actually forget that Jesus didn't just say, give yourself up completely to someone else. He did say, love others and love yourself. Like it.
Yeah. And sometimes we don't see it ourselves. And sometimes it takes a trusted friend to, put their hand on your shoulder and say, are you okay? Like, are you really okay? I'm a safe person to talk to. I can see you giving so much of who you are to this partner or this parent or this child. But are you actually taking care of yourself as well? Are you loving yourself? Because God loves all of us. And we reflect that love for God when we also respect and love ourselves.
And also, I suppose we need to think about the Christian community that surrounds us, don't we? Like we're a part of a church that is a family that is meant to love, care and support. And part of this question is, how do we as Christians separate ourselves from close members of our families who hurt us? And I think part of that is we need support in doing so. And the church might actually sit in this awkward spot of, how do I support both in this situation?
Yep. And I think what historically the church has done is specified some people to care for the victim and someone else to try and get help for the abusive partner. At least I know of one situation where that happened. But I think it's important that we can't do it all. We don't necessarily have the skills. We don't necessarily have the commitment it may take to help someone heal. And so maybe part of being a congregation is also recognizing, well, who in this congregation can help in this particular instance? Or who do we know as a congregation we can refer this situation on to?
Yeah.
And I guess part of that is knowing, well, actually, when do we need to call the police as well?
Yeah. Yes, of course. There is that edge in the difficult situations. And we hope and pray we never bump into that, but sometimes in life.
But we're a community of people, and sometimes people just, I won't use the word I was going to use.
Sometimes we're broken.
Yeah, that's a lovely religious way of saying what I want to say.
Yeah, sometimes we're broken. Yeah.
It just made me think. Desmond Tutu wrote a book, probably ages ago, called No Future Without Forgiveness. And the whole idea was there's no future if you don't forgive. But forgiveness was not about forgetting. Forgiveness was about acknowledging what has hurt us and allowing for the consequences. and then looking forward to how the future can be different. So it wasn't about, forgiveness wasn't about being a doormat.
Yep.
Forgiveness was about actually acknowledge the pain and hurt that's been caused and recognizing that there are consequences. It might be the dissolution of a marriage. It might be jail time. It might be counselling. It might be whatever it is. As Christians, we're called to forgive, but that doesn't negate consequences of any sort of abusive or violent behaviour.
Yes, and not condoning it, because that's actually, we're not following Christ if we are allowing people to suffer.
Yep.
Or if we're allowing ourselves to be oppressed or a doormat, are we?
Nope. It's like it's an issue that has plagued far too many people. And we've got it very wrong in the past.
Yes.
And I would hope that part of the pain of the process that the church, like the whole church, has been through, part of the pain and the seeking of justice and the trauma that some people have been through has actually like deeply informed how we care for ourselves and for each other going into the future.
Yeah. So, how do we as Christians separate ourselves from close members of our family who've hurt us physically and mentally? Carefully.
With help.
With help.
Whether it is help from the police or help from a counsellor or help from friends, or depending on the situation.
Yeah. And help from a community that can pray for you and with you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's also, I mean, if someone is processing childhood hurt and childhood violence from 50 years ago or something, maybe seek out professional help to help yourself work out, do I still want a relationship with this person? And how do I have a relationship with this person?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Because one would imagine within that question, there is a love for the person that we're separating from here. Like if they're a close family member or a close friend, like there's still a love for them, but that it doesn't mean that we should actually sit there and be being abused.
Yeah.
But there might be a way of working it through and moving forward.
Yeah. And if I don't want to put blame on a victim, sometimes our love shows in us wanting that person to get better. And sometimes the only way for that person to get better is if there's a short, sharp, we need to separate, we need to leave, if it's safe to do so. And that's where I think we need to be very careful and get some professional help, and whether it's free help via 1-800-RESPECT or whether it's help from a GP. But the love that's shown, because the question is, how do I continue to love this family who has hurt me? It's not about, I don't love them, so I don't care what happens to them. There's a great amount of love in the question.
Yeah.
Sometimes love shows itself by helping that person get help as well as ensuring your own safety.
Thank you, Ingrid. It's not an easy topic to sort of roam around in.
No. But it's good that someone could ask the question and that you're willing to tackle it.
Yeah. I think it's important that we tackle it, because we often assume as Christians we should just be doormats.
Yep. Forgive 70 by 7.
Yes. And look, forgiveness doesn't mean doing nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I deeply appreciate the conversation, and
Thank
I deeply appreciate that you would spend some time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.